So, YouTube is a very interesting site. We've gone through a lot of ups and downs with YouTube as a platform. Um, they're trying really hard to get themselves out of the dust. I think a lot of platforms are, but are they really going to succeed? I don't know. Hello, guys. Welcome back to Breaking It Down to the Team. My name is Chrissy, and today we're going to be talking about something that we all should be talking about: cryptocurrency. What blockchain is, and really the futuristic goal of what blockchain is about, but also thinking about if people really are going to invest in it and the different directions that a lot of companies have been taking in this industry, and why, if you're a creator, if you're a content creator, why this movement of cryptocurrency and blockchain is something that you should be reading about. So today, if you haven't really already heard about blockchain, if you haven't heard about Bitcoin, because that's really what blockchain is, let's talk about it. Blockchain is basically a process that of companies that started around 1990s, late 1990s. People got tired of big banks and big large companies monopolizing over money, finances, and opportunities. It's a lot of the reasons why cryptocurrency and the black world of the internet have been able to purchase items. A lot of these items have been commercialized as being guns and drugs, but some of them are just regular purchases that people don't want other people to know that they're purchasing. With cryptocurrency and blockchain, you are able to make a purchase in a quick, fast amount of time through digital currency without your content information being a part of it. Of course, when you purchase these items for the federal government to make sure that there's no international fraud or any kind of fraud at all, they put down your content information when you buy the Bitcoin, when you buy the different forms of blockchains like Ripple. But when you're making the transaction, that information does not have to be enclosed to the person you're making an interaction to, saving people from fraud, saving people from a whole bunch of things. Another huge part of this is with blockchain, there's no large banks, there's no fees, there's no extra stuff to it. And the reasoning as to why you need to get to know about this is because the whole purpose of blockchain that was created is because they wanted to take control out of the big guns. Taking control out of the big guns means there's more money going into your pocket. But it also means that the government won't be able to print out more dollar bills, making the dollar value go less, and doing restraints in their possibilities that can impact your money. And that was something that blockchain purpose was all really about. It was about coming up with freedom. Well, YouTube, Patreon, and many applications alike have currently changed their policies from 2018 to 2019 because all of the app stores in which they are coming from changed the policies in which for them to be an app in their stores. Mainly Apple. Google has been a little bit more lenient with their policies, but Apple's very price strict. And we can say that we've seen Tumblr take an effect on it after the child pornography went out. Apple pulled Tumblr out of the store, and a lot of applications took notice and realized that they had to make a change. Twitter also did as well, and even though Twitter has some loopholes in their policies, I can almost reassure you that in 2019, those loopholes are going to be closed. We already see it with Riley Reid, where she has promoted and advertised a podcast that she did with Logan Paul. And she consistently, repeatedly talked about it to help give in the hype to Logan Paul's podcast as being the number one porn star on Pornhub platform. But received a huge pushback and got her account suspended for 12 hours, as well as we have seen her getting taken off of social media platforms just like artists like her alike. We have seen many restraints. Businesses that sell toys and sex toys aren't able to sell. And with the country getting annoyed and upset of this, and because of these big companies, the only way in which, other than blockchain, to revolutionize would be to create your own app stores. But to get people to have the apps on the phones, you have to create your own phones because Apple and Google phones are not going to be taking in your app store. You'll be against their beliefs, their company values. So you would have to create a really good phone that people would want to buy, and then a really good service, because those phone companies, if they kind of push and promote their phones to these services already in place, the other phone companies like Apple and Android products might pull out. And there's a lot more money, a lot more stake, and a lot more brand into those large companies than there is with a startup. And that's where the problem lies. There's a big censorship problem in the United States, and there's a big censorship problem all around the world. Everyone is bothered by the censorship, and I know I have. I have really actually sat down at a computer and have thought about creating a company and thought about fighting back and have looked at the computer and nearly cried. We are entering an application world, whether we like it or not. Internet is still available, internet is still accessible, but in the next like 40, 50 years looking down the line, we're going to be submerging into applications. And with these big monopolies kind of telling us how we can live our lives and pretty much censoring us, we as a future might not be able, the niches and the things that comfort us may not even be available as a resource down the line. And thinking about that is scary. Thinking about the communities that we have built being removed, thinking about the areas in which we have found comfort in because of social media platforms, and the places in which we found out that we could relate to people, that people who do not live in our communities and our neighborhoods and live all around the world that we could relate to and go to would be gone. And that's a scary thought to think of because many people have felt like they belonged. As content creators, who create the content in which people feel happy and excited about. And those that do not follow the values get demonetized. Not saying that you should go after a career for the purpose of making money, but sometimes the things that we want to build and create take a lot of time, and without money, we won't be able to live. We won't be able to continue creating. And that is a big takeaway. A lot of these platforms like YouTube, like Patreon, would not be as big without content creators. They need content creators to survive, yet they've taken us for granted. They partnered up with brands, and they're the reason for our censorship. Now, YouTube is interested because YouTube had took a turn. If you haven't heard about Patreon lately, it seems as though because Patreon is an app and it is a part of the App Store, that it had to make limitations and restrictions on the type of form of creators and the content in which that they create that they can provide as a membership option. A lot of YouTubers turned to Patreon because they wanted to be able to create the content that they wanted to create and allow people who believe in their method to basically follow them and basically help them. And Patreon has actually taken away and removed pages from people because it went against new policy restraints in the app stores, which is another huge thing about partnership. A lot of people, in result to that, have created their own websites where they have their own membership deals where people can just sign up for memberships directly from their site and make 100%. If you are a content creator and you are thinking, if you're a small content creator, that might hurt you. Numbers of followers you have really should be based on quality and not quantity. If you have the type of community where you have low numbers, but all of those really supportive low number fans are really there and they purchase your items and they're really big fans of your work, then you will make it. You'll survive. But if you have a lot of followers that are not that active, you're going to be taking a big hit in the nearby future. We want to work on building quality followers and not quantity followers. But the real big thing and the reason why I decided to do this podcast today about this in particular is mainly because YouTube as a platform, I was watching a YouTube video. I was watching PewDiePie. PewDiePie was talking about Genius and how Genius was sinking. And in the kind of like right upper hand corner, I see YouTube censored as an ad. And I'm like, they're like, you want to go against YouTube censored? Like, this is a new platform. And I was pretty surprised. It kind of like aired me by a shocker because it was like, oh, wait a second. YouTube is promoting something that goes against YouTube? What? Like, I'm sorry, what? And on like one of the most popular channels that there is. PewDiePie just hit 80 million subscribers. He's the first one, and 80 million is actually considered like top 20 country, would be like the population size of a country. So he has a really big following stream, a very big subscription stream, and this video that he had like 10 million views already. The content in which the advertisement was shown under, basically when you click on it, it looks like blockchain. It's called LBRY, LIBRY. And basically what it is, it's a blockchain site. This is why we've talked about cryptocurrency. This is why we're talking about blockchain. But I think the most important factor to include is that on its site it says accepts Bitcoin. Now I don't know if they accept any other form of cryptocurrency besides Bitcoin, but I can tell you that Bitcoin as of right now is worth $3,000 a share. With that being said, the basically what's going to be happening is that YouTube created a partnership with this program because it understands that content creators are getting demonetized. They understand that people are creating content, and Patreon won't even take them. They understand that. And by them taking the part in understanding that, they also are taking the part in understanding that YouTube has done wrong. 2019, they understand. 1 million dislikes on their YouTube Rewind. There's a lot of hints that YouTube isn't doing well as a company. And with that being said, YouTube has taken it upon itself to create and partner up with this partnership program. There is a lot of pros to this program, but there is also a lot of cons. Let's talk about one pro. The number one pro is that it's like Patreon, but blockchain. So, because it's a blockchain site, there's no fees. When you are to purchase something on your credit card from a company, sometimes they take $1 off from doing an online transaction. Okay? Sometimes there is fees taken out from the company. The company has to pay a fee for letting an online transaction occur. Sometimes you don't get all of the money. Sometimes banks make money off of the amounts that you're paying. Sometimes there's rates exchanges. And a lot of times when you're putting money back into your pocket, there's fees on that. They take 50 cents, they take whatever. With blockchain, there is no fee. So whatever amount you set your price to, you're getting that amount. You're getting 100% of the amount. So you're making 100% commission of everything that you make. You also get to set the price to however you like. And on the site, they talk about if you were to set each of your videos to even just a penny, you would make more money than what YouTube AdSense would actually pay you. So that is something to keep in mind. If you put up a post for a penny a day and people would willingly want to pay a penny, so let's say you get 100,000 views, then you get 100,000 pennies, which would be equivalent to $1,000 per video. Yeah. And let's say you upload like 7 videos a week, let's just say. You would make $7,000 for that week. And in total, you make $28,000 for the month. And in total, you would make more money for that than for YouTube AdSense. So the benefit is there. It's just how many people are willing to pay a penny. The real main con with this method is that it's blockchain. And I say it because people know Bitcoin exists. People know about blockchain. People aren't fully educated about blockchain. When people look into it, it's kind of confusing. And because when people look into it, it's kind of confusing, a lot of people don't bother. The people who do bother and the people who are adding blockchain and the people who are a part of it, there's not that many. Another thing to understand is that you won't get an advantage off of using this platform unless you have somebody that, unless your demographic would actually be able to purchase cryptocurrency. And then with the high ratings in which Bitcoin is worth, with $3,000 right now, it's also sort of like, are people going to pay for it? Because right now, actually, Bitcoin is kind of known. There's this new company called Ripple. It's not new, but it's newer than Bitcoin. It's been around since 2008. And they actually have a faster time of processing. So Bitcoin can take between 2 or 3 minutes to 10 minutes to process, versus Ripple takes 4 seconds. So the question really is that when we're looking at cryptocurrency, so many companies are working with Bitcoin because Bitcoin boosted up in 2017 of November, and there is a lot of potential with Bitcoin. Everybody knows of Bitcoin, everybody has heard of Bitcoin, but not everybody has Bitcoin. Okay, not everybody has blockchain. People are still using credit cards, people are still using all those forms. And the main problem that I have with Bitcoin, and the main problem I have with all of this, is the fact that if you research or look into Bitcoin and you look into versus other companies, you will understand that Bitcoin is out of its time. Like, Bitcoin is the future, but Bitcoin isn't now. And that's what questions me when you think about YouTube partnering up with this program, because it it Bitcoin, to me, and I think to a lot of people, no, Bitcoin will make it, but it's an investment for the future. And when I mean an investment for the future, I think in maybe 5-10 years we'll hit it. I don't think it's for now. And also, I think it needs to innovate. I think it needs to work on its processing fee, because as of right now, I believe it's the longest to do processing. And there's no guaranteed time of how long it's going to take versus Ripple. I'm really for Ripple, because Ripple is the cryptocurrency that's going to come in and it's going to make it easier for companies, because a lot of companies already, and brands and banks have already bought this cryptocurrency. And I know that cryptocurrency is supposed to be blockchains going against the big banks. But we need to understand something here. As much as we hate to admit it, and from the depression and from 2008 recession, people still trust big banks more than they trust these startups banks. It's true. You know, blockchain is really new, okay? And a lot can go wrong. So, for me and to me, a lot more people will trust that. And it will be easier to transform people to go from their credit cards to that, knowing that other branches and other opportunities will have that. And over time, people will get tired of the blockchain fees and they will submerge into Bitcoin. But Bitcoin has to have a work on their processing time. I do not see Bitcoin achieving right now. And you also have to understand your demographic. There's a lot of opportunity with this platform because you get to keep 100% of your commission. You get to accept all the money that's coming in and you get to achieve. But the thing you have to understand is that your demographic needs to buy Bitcoin. Your demographic needs to buy cryptocurrency. And I don't know if that's going to mean that you're going to have a conversation with your audience. Sit them down, let them know, tell them how it is. But I also don't understand, and I don't fully grasp onto how is this going to go against monopolies. Because at the same time, you're able to going to do purchases, but when we have applications like Apple and Google in the future, they have to create their own blockchains. They're all working on creating their own blockchains. We have Facebook creating their own blockchain currently. I believe Google is gonna jump on it. Right now, Google and YouTube obviously is the same company, and they're partnering up with this person. So obviously, LBRY is gonna be their cryptocurrency. Instagram works with Facebook, so Facebook is creating cryptocurrency so that it can submerge to its like 2 billion, 3 billion platform. The issue with all of this is, and the reason why I'm bringing it to your attention, is because it's going to impact how you make money. We are no longer dealing with cash. Back then we dealt with cash. It was coins, and it was cash, then it was cards. Now we're entering this digital world. And if you are a freelancer, you're a creator, you're a content creator, this is going to impact you. And I do recommend you read on blockchain. I recommend you open up and you talk about, what blockchain is going to look like, what all of these things are going to look like, because the future of our technology and the future of everything is all going to be dependent on how we interact with this site and all of these other things. Now, I'm on the LBRY website. It's LBRY.io. And it talks openly about their YouTube partnership. But I'm going to read you a little bit about the article. So it says, it's a frequently asked questions. It's how does LBRY benefit content creators? Can I earn money using LBRY? And it says, in our AMA title, we pitch LBRY as a community-driven YouTube alternative that could save the internet. That's a lot of big talk. But what does it mean for the people who care most about the changes happening on YouTube? The content creators. If you are earning money from your videos on YouTube right now, you are likely familiar with the recent controversies our videos being demonetized for content unfriendly to advertisers. It's no surprise that YouTube caters to advertisers because ultimately that's their main revenue stream. LBRY is not an ad-driven media stream. In fact, it's not even a traditional media service at all. LBRY is an open protocol that allows you to publish your content to the network at no cost to you and allows you to set up a price per stream per download if you wish. Because LBRY is a protocol and not a corporate store, there is no approval process for content to be listed and no authority that can demonetize your videos. That's between you and your audience. With LBRY, pricing is completely the discretion of the creator, and 100% of that price goes to the creator. Compare this to iTunes' fixed pricing tiers and 30% commission of every sale. Because LBRY uses digital currency, a la Bitcoin, creators can accept micropayments for every view without worrying about credit card processing fees, or a studio could use LBRY to distribute a theoretical release to an independent theater and charge thousands of dollars per download. The only constraint on pricing is whatever your viewers are willing to pay. With YouTube monetization, creators earn a variable amount based upon viewers' engagement with ads. There is no set formula, but we found a reasonable guesstimate of around $2 per 1,000 views. This works out to be a penny per 5 views. So on LBRY, if you charge just 1 penny per view, a price any viewer would pay without a second thought, you may get 5 times the per view earnings you get from YouTube instantly. Furthermore, you can share content of any type: video, music, ebooks, images, podcasts, all on the same platform. So basically what you would do is, from LBRY, I've noticed that you would put in your channel because they're partnered, so it would go through the channel. And then you can automatically sync all your videos. So if you already are a creator on YouTube already, you don't have to really worry about, oh, I'm going to have to sync all my stuff. You can sync all of your stuff, and then you can set it for a set price. Obviously, depending on your demographic, you're going to see who will pay. If you're still in the startup process and still learning about your demographic, you can test out LBRY, but don't make the price so high. Make it kind of low and reasonable because it is per episode. The way I looked at this is kind of like Amazon Prime, because if you were to buy episodes from Amazon Prime, it's usually $1.99 to $1.99 each. I do not recommend doing this though, because a lot of people are saving money, and right now in the worst timing ever. We have a partial government shutdown, and a lot of people aren't even making money. So the best bet to me would be to wait until all of this settles down or goes someplace, and then to venture onto it, to pursue it, and to get a larger audience for this. The thing is maybe you would want to survey your audience and see who actually does cryptocurrency. If you are in fact a YouTuber or a content creator that currently already talks about cryptocurrency and businesses on your platforms, this will be the perfect platform for you because you know your audience is listening and trying to get into cryptocurrency. If you're in economics and finance, recommending cryptocurrency is the best way to get your viewers to even move onto the site. The only issue that I have yet is people are not completely going digital yet. We're kind of in the process of it, but we're not fully there yet. In New York City, MTA has said by 2025, all Metro cards will be gone. So we'll all be running on apps being scanned, and they already have in some locations of throughout New York City and their largest locations like Bowling Green. And I think they have some in Times Square as well. But this is just like a process of understanding where the future may lie. Being a content creator or being a creator at all, you should always be like 5 steps ahead. You should always know what's coming next in the future and every single direction. And you should also know what your game plan is going to be to come into that industry. A lot of times with platforms, they don't really tell you about what features are going to be. They just tell you abruptly, and then you have to kind of format and kind of take advantage and kind of use up those spaces while you do. But we have to also understand that cryptocurrency has been something that's been talked about since the late 1990s, and there's a lot of conversation about it. We also have to understand that Amazon has been said to possibly enter into that space because he bought a couple of blockchains himself, and Facebook is expected to because they already are trying to hire people into that, and the fact that Google has partnered. And those are the largest and the biggest brands that there are monopolies. So we have to understand that. We don't know if Apple is getting involved in blockchain. Um, that's still not known of. I don't really think Apple really even knows what they're doing anymore. Since they released like 2 phones right after each other, like within a 1 month period. Um, I don't I think Jobs would like hit them in the head like, "Are you stupid?" But I don't really think they know what direction they're going in. I don't think they have really good leadership management over there either. So I do not know what really is in the future for them. Um, but I would make sure that you're on this because everyone's been talking about it. And if the New York City government is even talking about going digital, then it's coming. The major problems that we have with going digital obviously is going to be the inequality in financial and opportunities between low income and middle class and higher income streams. And also people who live in local communities that are more small hometown, because they're not everyone goes fully digital, and even with the striking numbers of credit cards and debit cards, they haven't gone that way either. Obviously, creating technology more accessible, like using Square, has offered a lot more smaller businesses to be able to accept credit cards without the high fees. But we have to also think about when we're creating technology about all of our users and all of our platforms. And maybe you have a few people who in your audience that actually like cryptocurrency and wouldn't mind benefiting. So maybe you have a Patreon or you have a website with a membership that does not currently accept cryptocurrency. And then you have this platform for people who would love to be able to purchase with cryptocurrency. And as that transformation increasingly occurs where people become more digital, you already entered the digital space, but you also have that other option just in case people are not ready or do not fully trust or do not want to or do not understand. As we have these conversations about blockchain, people will become more familiar with blockchain. So another thing I want to do is I kind of want to talk a little bit about blockchain because I do generally feel like a lot of people don't understand it. I somewhat understand it. The the thing with blockchain is that there's no like government check. So that's why a lot of people are like nervous about, oh, there's no government check. So the reason why it's in a blockchain is it's like one transaction that occurred is a pattern. So if you had a purchase that was done, you have a purchase, and then it ends the same way it starts. So if one purchase was done first, then it starts with that purchase that started, like, that ended, and then the next purchase comes. And it kind of goes around in like a line full of data. When an error gets put on a blockchain, it all has to restart. They have to go back and change everything. So by keeping this consistent pattern, it kind of actually helps people to understand and to know if fraud has occurred, if something hasn't gone right, because the information won't be continuous in pattern. But it's still a fairly new concept, and money is something that's important for people because money buys things, money buys houses, money buys food. Money keeps, like, people alive. It's a necessity. Society has shaped it and made it become a necessity. So understanding blockchain is truly, like, the whole thing about it. It's truly what society is going to be, and it's truly understanding it. The digital markets of digital currency is fairly, like, complicated. I feel like when I read it, it's kind of just like, oh, this is cool. We'll have more control of our businesses. We'll have more control of our money. But at the same time, it's also like, are we? Are these people creating it are going to come over and, use our information? What is government control going to look like this in the future? Are we open and more sensitive to more international issues around it? So it's really understanding the future complexities of that. But blockchain is really truly a complicated concept to, like, understand. And Ripple made me understand the concept. I did not understand it through Bitcoin. And that's another reason why I feel like Bitcoin is before its time. I'm right now reading an article. It's from HBR. It's from 2017, and it talks about the truth about blockchain, which is cryptocurrency. And I'm going to read this small paragraph. It says, Blockchain promises to solve this problem. The technology at the heart of Bitcoin and other virtual currencies. Blockchain is open, distributed ledger that can record transactions between two parties efficiently and in a verifiable and permanent way. The ledger itself can be programmed to trigger transactions automatically. With blockchain, we can imagine a world in which contracts are embedded in digital code and stored in transparent, shared databases where they are protected from deletion, tampering, and revision. In this world, every agreement, every process, every task, and every payment would have a digital record and signature that could be identified, validated, stored, and shared. Intermediaries like lawyers, brokers, and banks might no longer be necessary. Individual organizations, machines, and algorithms would freely transact and interact with one another with little friction. This is an immense potential of blockchain. So, of course, blockchain, just reading that, has a lot of promises. It has a lot of things, but as we know, as technology can go wrong, problems can occur. So, as we're entering this, it's kind of just like, can we live in a world without lawyers, without brokers, without bankers? At the same time we want to go into that, it's also the same time we have to understand lawyers, brokers, and bankers may lose jobs. Nobody ever thought a lawyer could lose jobs. Everyone always said, go to college, become a lawyer. You make a lot of money. You might not. So also, if you're a college student or a college age student, you're becoming a lawyer and you're becoming a financial lawyer, you might want to redirect what focus you're doing in. You want to be educated on the future, and you want to be educated on things around you, whether it has to deal with your career or not deal with your career, because everything interacts with each other and everything interjects with each other. Everything will eventually affect you. And that's just the truth. That's just reality. Indeed, virtually everyone has heard the claim that blockchain will revolutionize business and redefine companies and economies. Although we share enthusiasm for its potential, we worry about the hype. It's not just security issues such as the 2014 collapse of one Bitcoin exchange and the most recent hacks of others that concern us. Our experience studying technological innovation tells us that there is to be a blockchain revolution. Many barriers, technology, governance, organization, and even societal will have to fall. It would be a mistake to rush headlong into blockchain innovation without understanding how it's likely to take hold. So, this is what I'm talking about. When you're thinking about your audience and you're thinking about the people that are going to support you, you have to understand whether or not they're going to even want to get into crypto. A lot of people aren't completely there. And that's why I say Bitcoin is a little bit ahead of its time. Because the way that Bitcoin functions is not like all forms of cryptocurrency. All forms of cryptocurrency functions in different ways. And the way that Bitcoin has functioned and the way this particular blockchain has functioned has issues in the before. It's very easy for coders and hackers to get in. And a lot of people, depending on their financial situation and depending on your background and your basically your background of your audience, you have to understand that they may not go with crypto. And this is one example, okay? You probably won't have somebody from the 90s in your audience, but if you do, remember they had to deal with the recession. A lot of them, after big banks, put their money underneath the mattress and didn't trust anyone with money. So if you do deal with a very older crowd of generations, understand that they lived through the depression and they don't trust anybody with their money, like anybody. Then if you're dealing with more of your audience, it's more of a recession from 2008. They might be in their 30s, and when they came out of college, they didn't have a job and they entered immediate debt because they took out very heavy loans. The 6 month grace period ended and they still didn't have a job. If you're dealing with that audience, they're against big banks and they're against federal government loans, but they may still be skeptical about entering cryptocurrency because they do not want to end up A, in debt, B, hacked of money, or C, just all of that above. If they were around in 2008, but their community, the way they grew up and everything, they weren't impacted by the 2008 recession because let's say they lived in apartment buildings, they were renting at the time, and they weren't a housing owner, real estate owner, or owning a mortgage, or their jobs were not fired from them, or taken away from them. They might be for cryptocurrency, but at the amount of where Bitcoin is worth in value right now, they might not be able to afford because anybody who hasn't dealt with that statistic or anybody who was too young at the time to deal with that statistic is kind of young and too young to buy a $30,000 Bitcoin stock. So that's where you have to understand is that the future might be moving and pushing forward and you want to step ahead, but you also have to understand the complexities of blockchain and whether or not your audience is fit for it. Because even though the future is entering that way and it's a very promising future, it doesn't have that much experience, exposure, or anything. And we are entering it. There's no say that we're not, but just understand your hopeful audience won't be compelled into it. And that's really like the problem with cryptocurrency. And it even says true blockchain led transformation of business and government. We believe it's still many years away. That's because blockchain is not a disruptive technology which can attack a traditional business model with a lower cost solution and overtake incumbent firms quickly. Blockchain is a foundational technology. It has potential to create new foundations for our economic and social systems. But while the impact can be enormous, it will take decades for blockchain to seep into our economic and social infrastructure. The process of adoption will be gradual and steady, not sudden. As waves of technology and institutional change gain momentum, that insight and its strategic implication are what we'll explore in this article. Basically, you need to also understand that people are comfortable being comfortable. They're comfortable being uncomfortable. They're comfortable with big banks. They're comfortable with all these things, knowing the fees, knowing the charges, because this is something they've been used to. These are procedures they've been used to, and so far it's done good. Okay? So far it's done its job. They might be uncomfortable with the fees, but they are comfortable knowing that the process and everything it's all going to be okay. Blockchain is something uncomfortable. It's some kind of new thing that nobody really knows. Nobody knows if it's really going to work. And they're kind of uncomfortable with the idea of it possibly being implementing. And when you're entering that kind of society, it is popular, and the way that the government and the way that we're currently going with our partial government ban, okay, one. Two, with people getting tired of the government, with the he said, she said, Republican versus Democrat, all this back and forth of lies and miscommunication, and the frustration of big banks with the depression, with the recession, and with a possible another stock market crash. People are tired. People are aggravated with content creators being demonetized, not being able to create the content, and yet brands are making money off of the platforms they helped build. There is a lot of anger. And when there's a lot of anger, a lot of change can happen. But when a lot of anger happens and the change is going to impact our financial, our social, and our technology innovation, it's scary. It's a scary change. So, as much as I would like to say we're going to get angrier and angrier and angrier, and that might increase the transformation of these blockchains being implemented into society, what I would like to say is that it might increase the rates in which, but it will still be a 5 to 10 year long run. And I know this is saying decades, and it is going to take decades because not everyone's going to jump on it. It's like social media, it's like technology, it's like Facebook. It took a decade for Facebook to be the way it is, but that does not mean that because people getting angry and fueled up and hyped, that they're not going to jump in. It just means it's going to take a long time for the rest of the world to jump in. And in order for it to be a primary form of money and a primary form of finance to come in, it needs to be the whole world jump in. And that's going to be about 5 to 10 years from now. That's not going to be now. But you need to understand cryptocurrency, and you need to understand which blockchain's working right now, because you need to provide those resources now so that as people getting angry and frustrated and are jumping in, you can have both formats of income stream so that when one starts to over dominate the other, you are 5 steps ahead from everybody else instead of realizing that and getting into the game and not having that form of control. Because the way blockchain works is that they only print a certain amount of blockchain, which is not really print, but they only have a certain amount of blockchain. They're not going, after they hit the limit that their company or their blockchain has set, there's not going to be more coming in. So it's like gold, okay? It's like gold. You only have a certain amount of gold in the world. True or false? True. You only have a certain amount. You can possibly make, but not really. You know, you only have a certain amount of gold in the world. You can't just print gold. You can't just make gold. There's a certain amount in the world that exists. And if you go out and you go search and you go find your gold and you have a lot of gold, when it starts becoming a form of currency, you're going to be at the top. And that's exactly what this one is. If you start forming into blockchain and cryptocurrency now, when it becomes a thing, you'll be in control. Content creators, it's now not just about that, but it's also about understanding your future. If you have a 5 to 10 year plan of consistently being a content creator, this is something you need to prepare for. It's not just creating content, it's not just making sure you get money, it's not making sure you can live, it's also understanding where you want to go 5-10 years from now. It's also understanding where you want to map out, where you're going to plan, where you're going to dominate next. And as much as people want to say, oh, you need to understand the new cameras are coming out. You need to understand the new content, the new Photoshop, the new applications, all these other stuff. You also need to understand your finances. You're a business. You're an independent business. You need to understand every single realm, and you can't always have other people do it for you. This is something you really need to start grabbing in for. So, as much as I like to say congratulations for YouTube for partnering up with this program, it's a little bit early for its time, but I'm hoping that people actually do start to take advantage of it now and start to build that platform now, because they will get a head start in the future. So basically, blockchain was started and introduced in 1972. TCP/IP first gained traction in a single use case as the basis for email among the researchers on ARANet. The U.S. Department of Defense pursued to the commercial internet. Before TCP/IP, telecommunications architecture was based on circuit switching, in which connections between two parties or machines had to be pre-established and sustained throughout an exchange. To ensure that any two nodes could communicate, telecom service providers and equipment manufacturers had invested in billions in building dedicated lines. If you don't understand this, basically it's a procedure today. When you are basically making a transaction for any company or any business, when you put in your credit card, you have to put in what? You have to put in your name, you have to put in your address, you have to put in the CVV code, you have to put in your number and the card number and the expiration date, right? So basically, before you do the transaction, they have to make sure your car is officialized. Once your car is officialized, the amount of money that has been told to go through to the company um, gets like the information gets dismissed. Like one party, the bank in which you have it from gets sent to the company. The company verifies the information, and once the company verifies the information, it gets processed and then it gets verified. Over time, we've had debit and credit cards. The process in which that happens has increased to a second. So nowadays you don't even think about it, because once you make the process, it goes through. If it doesn't go through, you get an put another card. That's basically what this process is. The TCP and the IP turned that model on its heads. The new protocol transmits information by digitalizing it and breaking into very small brackets, each including address information. This is what blockchain is. Okay, so blockchain basically is the new protocol of digitalizing it and breaking into very small packets, each including address information. Once released into the network, the packets could take any route to the recipient. Smart sending and receiving nodes at the network edges could disassemble and reassemble the packets and interpret the embedded code. There was no need for dedicated private lines or massive infrastructure. TCP created an open, shared public network without any central authority or party responsible for its maintenance and improvement. By creating this is basically what blockchain is. And I know that was a lot of information. So basically, when you purchase something, they automatically digitalize it. It becomes very small packets and includes address information. So it includes where the cryptocurrency is coming from. Bitcoin is a very well known. There's also Ripple, and there's also Enthusiasm. It starts with an EETH. That is another form of crypto. There's also 4 or 5 other different types of cryptocurrencies out there. But basically, that address gets sent, not your name, not your info, not your data. When you purchase these, there are in stock, there are in digital code, they're all in digital media that you purchased it and that it is yours. But when you're doing the transactions, that information doesn't actually get sent. The information that gets sent is the address in which the type of crypto that you had purchased. And once it was released into the network, the packets could take any route to the recipient. So once they're in the digital space, they can take any path. So it basically gets sent to the person that they are purchasing the items to. And now smart sending and receiving nodes at the network edges can disassemble and reassemble the packets and interpret the encoded data. So basically, the people who have sent the data and the people receiving the data can be able to assemble and reassemble the packets to make sure that everything is aligned. So basically, they would deassemble it when somebody makes a purchase. It gets taken out of their Bitcoin symbols and it goes into the recipients, which is the person you're purchasing from. And then once that happens, they can also reassemble it if, let's just say, that something in the code is wrong. If there is some kind of issue or problem or fraud or anything, they can reassemble what it would look like to make sure that the transactions are valid and true. And there was no need for any private lines. So basically, before blockchain was even existed, we had what we have now, which is the debit cards where people take off fees and people make sure and do security checks to make sure everything is aligned and there's no fraud and no hacking that exists. The thing is that the innovation in the technology is doing this for you instead of having a person oversee it, which can actually lead room to really good hackers being able to hack into it. And that seems to be one of the biggest problems that are coming in today. But during the late 1980s and 1990s, a growing number of firms such as Sun, Next, Hewlett Packard, and the Silicon Graphics used TCP/IP in part to create localized private networks and organizations. To do so, they developed building blocks and tools that branded it using beyond email, gradually replacing more traditional local network technologies and standards. As organizations adopted these building blocks and tools, they saw traumatic gains in productivity, which is again the process of blockchain. TCP burst into broad public use with the advent of the World Wide Web in the mid 1990s. This is Bitcoin. New technology companies quickly emerged to provide the plumbing, the hardware, software, and services needed to connect to the now public network and exchange information. Netscape commercialized browsers, web services, and other tools and components that aided the development and adoption of internet services and applications. Sun drove the development of Java, the application programming language, as information on the web grew exponentially. InfoSeek, Excite, AltaVisa, and Yahoo were born to guide users around it. So basically, as these platforms grew and as information grew on these website platforms, we've created a form of monopoly because people were able to build it first. They monopolize over these blockchains. So blockchains have been existent for a long period of time, but a lot of these large companies monopolize the system, and that's why these smaller cryptocurrencies as Bitcoin and Ripple come in. They're trying to beat out these large companies because they have basically been taking advantage of the power they have been receiving. And once the basic infrastructure gains critical mass, a new generation of companies took advantage of low cost connectivity by creating internet services that were compelling substitutes for existing businesses. CNET moved news online. Amazon offered more books for sales than any bookshop. Priceline and Expedia made it easier to buy airline tickets and brought unprecedented transparency to the process. The ability of these newcomers to get expensive reach at relatively low cost put significant pressure on traditional businesses like newspapers, bricks, and more retailers. Relying on broad internet connectivity, the new wave of companies created novel, transformative applications that fundamentally changed the way new businesses created and captured value. These companies were built on new peer-to-peer architecture and generated value by coordinating distributed network of users. Think of how eBay charged online retail for auctions, Napster changed the music industry, Skype changed telecommunications, and Google, which exploited user generation links to provide more relevant research and change web search. So basically, all of these blockchains have done really good ways of creating free and access and affordable ways for everyday people to be able to do amazing things. Actually, fun fact: the founder and creator of eBay, was really good friends with the guy who produced LinkedIn. So before the guy who made the app LinkedIn, he actually worked for eBay, and he actually also worked for PayPal. He graduated from Ivy League school, as well as the people who create PayPal and eBay, and those were actually his friends. So a lot of the big companies nowadays, they're all basically were friends one time with each other, except for Mark Zuckerberg. But the reason why I'm bringing these up today is because we're entering into what blockchain really is. This is really good core information to understand about blockchain. And basically, what all this information is saying is that as things became more accessible because innovation was able to become more accessible, people were able to build companies that were able to create affordable options away from monopolized set pathways. It broke away retail, it changed everything. Amazon has changed everything. A lot of companies has, eBay has, Google has, Skype has, YouTube has, um, Facebook has, Instagram has. We've all been able to change everything. Everything becomes accessible now. Money has become accessible now. Creating businesses have become accessible. And what they're trying to push for is finances to become more accessible as well as becoming more affordable. And that's really where blockchains are. And it even says companies are using blockchains to track items through complex supply chains, which is what blockchain really is. It's really complex supply chains. That's really what the blockchain is. And these informations and these architectures and these platforms have allowed you content creators to do your job. It's allowed you to format. These companies create spaces for you. And within those spaces, you guys have brought it up and have made it the platforms in which they are. And you should know and be educated about why these opportunities have came from you and what you can do to make sure and ensure that your opportunities will be instilled and stay and go on to the future. With that being said, you as a person who is not a business person but does create content, my content that I create is in fact podcasts, no surprise there. But with the content in which that I create on my individual Instagram, I had said yesterday that anybody who has been able to comment, to listen to my podcast and comment their basically comment their username onto one of my questions that I've answered on my Instagram just the other day will get a free shout out on my podcast. So thank you, TMAC underscore switch at SWISHH for listening to my podcast. I love the fact that you really love my podcast and love listening to it and really want to join into my mission of building my self-love podcast. As well as I would like to give a shout out to Loyal to Royal, LOYOL to ROYL. Thank you so much for supporting me. And if you would like to shout out yourself, all you have to do is follow my Instagram at Chrissy, CHRISSY underscore Brooklyn, BROOKYLN. And I will give you a shout out once you comment on one of my posts, your name, as well as saying that you listen to my podcast and this recent podcast right here. This is really good information for people who want to be able to grow, create companies, create businesses, succeed, do everything that they want in life. This is really for you. And if you really want to prosper, if you really want to create, if you really want to build, if you really want to continue to strive along, I really truly recommend looking into blockchain. Look into cryptocurrency, because whether you're a content creator or you're not, your world's going to change, and the more educated you're on it, the more likely you can make the right decisions for your future to make sure that you succeed, because blockchain is simply just a new financial opportunity, just like YouTube has created, just how Instagram, just how Facebook, just how all these platforms have created new accessible ways to make money. Blockchain is simply just that. So, if you're a YouTuber and you are interested in the program that has been joined, you can go to LBRY.io. And if you are interested in reading more about the article that I have read with you guys today about blockchains, you can go to hbr.org/2017/01/ the truth about blockchain, with little dashes in between, the truth about blockchain. This is from the Harvard Business Review. Once again, just put in hbr.org/2017/the-truth-about-blockchain. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope you guys can be able to take the real information from this podcast. As well as one little last thing that I would like to add to you about this podcast today is that next week we will be starting our first ever podcast for the Self-Love podcast, as well as I will be having a blog that will have an interactive blog where people can create memberships, as well as being able to post and create their own posts. It's going to be 100% completely free and accessible to everyone to use, as well as my podcast will be branched on there. The podcast will also be available on YouTube. It will be available on SoundCloud. It will be available on Pandora, and it will be available on all different platforms. We're currently working on branching and making sure they're available on all forms of streaming platforms that you utilize, so that everybody who loves a certain area can utilize it. If you are a podcaster yourself, you might want to know that Buzzsprout, which is a company that is a hosting site other than Anchor, it's also another posting site. They are actually Pandora had actually opened up its doors, and it only for a while let only certain closed podcasters, well-known podcasters, to go on the space, but now they're allowing individuals. I have a feeling Anchor will probably increase it and opening up to Pandora as this news has become new. But if you are interested into streaming into that, yeah, you should do it. They have a free account where you can upload up to 2 hours for free, so you don't have to pay as well. Another thing that I would also like to mention is that if you are somebody who likes to create audiograms for your podcast, Headliner is a really good one. It's completely free. You don't have to pay a dime. And they also do it for Instagram TVs. They do it for Instagram. They do it for all social media platforms. And they also do it for YouTube for full videos. So that is a platform that I'm going to be using a lot for self-love, as well as I'm going to be using for this podcast as well. If there's anything that you would like for me to talk about that I haven't talked about, make sure you come and slide into my DMs. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys want to hear next. And that's the tea. Have a nice day, you guys. Bye.